titled "Has Player Empowerment Gone Too Far?" Now, the thumbnail is Damian Lillard, because he has really been the star of the show when it comes to this player empowerment shit as of late. It really started with LeBron. You know what I'm saying? It really did start with LeBron. He has been the face of player empowerment, and I think he helped a new generation of NBA players really, get into it. But the conversation is, 13 years later, have things gone too far? I know when all of this started, it was because teams used to just waste players' careers. LeBron was very close to it. Kevin Garnett is another example. You know what I'm saying? Damian Lillard is honestly another example. Anthony Davis is another example. So at some point, players were like, fuck this loyalty shit. I understand you guys have given a lot to me in my career, but at the same token, I'm going to take my career into my own hands. Now, at some point, I think when it comes to a lot of these things, there is a line to be crossed of like, yo, bro, you're not that guy for real. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, bro, I understand you want to take control over your career, but at some point you are being selfish to the nth degree, and you are destroying this fan base and this franchise that has given you a lot. So that's a conversation that I think the video is going to have. And that's a conversation I want to have today. So shout out to Rusty, man. Let's go ahead and react to it.
Lillard trade saga has gone in a lot of different directions in a short amount of time, primarily because of a power struggle between Dame and Portland's front office.
I haven't watched a Rusty video in a minute, too.
Telling other teams that he wouldn't play for them, this has sparked a debate surrounding player empowerment. This is a classic. I love this song. But not only that, the NBA has now issued a statement to all 30 teams in the league, as well as informed Damian and his agent that they could receive fines for, I guess, doing something that multiple star players have done before.
Any future comments of the sort, as far as him wanting to only play in Miami, will be potentially subject him to discipline if those comments continue, as well as a warning to the NBPA that any future comments by players, their agents, that are similar to the ones as far as I only want to play for this specific team in a trade request, if that's made, that could also be subject to potential discipline as well. The NBA told its teams that they spoke to Goodwin, they spoke to Lillard, and that Goodwin essentially denied telling teams that Lillard would only play in Miami. The NBA also spoke to other teams, and essentially they were given the messaging as well that Goodwin's statements were consistent for the most part.
There's a lot to unpack.
Because to me, with the whole Dame shit, I'm fine with him demanding a trade, okay? I'm fine. But then when you go out of your way to pick and choose exactly who the fuck you go to this degree, it's like, yo, what the fuck, bro? I just think there's a line, to be honest with you. I also didn't like it when James Harden was doing it. So it's not just, B-Souls, you're just salty because, whatchamacallit, because Dame doesn't want to go to Boston. It's nothing like that. When James Harden was doing that shit too, I didn't like the way he was going about it. When Anthony Davis was going about the same shit too, I didn't like the way he was going about it. So I've personally been consistent, to be honest with you. I'm fine with people demanding trade requests, especially when they've gotten to that point in their career and they don't want to waste their time on a losing franchise. But to go throughout all these different paths and all these different things for you to force exactly where you want to go to, I think that's where I personally draw the line, and that's where things become corny to me. Now, in hindsight, all those things don't really matter once the trade is actually made, but the process of it is very, very fucking annoying to me.
Unpack here, so let's get into it. Real quick, if you end up enjoying this video, please be sure to subscribe. I'm going to be uploading at least 2 times a week for the foreseeable future, so Stay tuned for that. Also drop a like. It only takes 1 second and it makes a massive difference in how the video performs in the YouTube algorithm. It is much appreciated. Let's take a look at where this all started. After officially requesting a trade, Dame makes it clear that he wants to be in Miami and Miami only. And on Portland's side of things, they obviously want a good return for their franchise player. These are both reasonable desires. On Portland's end, as a front office, they are obligated to try and get as good of a return as possible. And given how historically awful Portland has been at this whole front office thing, they might as well...
real quick, Cardiac, I seen your text. I'm going to respond at some point today. I was outside for real before I came on stream, so I just didn't have time to respond. But
load up on a ton of assets to make it harder for them to fail. They could still very well fail, but, you know, they got to try here. And for Dame, I understand why Miami is specifically where he wants to end up. He fits there perfectly, like insanely perfectly. And it's of course a team that should be extremely competitive given that they were just in the NBA Finals. It would also give Dame a chance to be coached not only by the first good coach of his career.
I want to say this because King Benny Garcia is in the chat, and he says, y'all are doing too much on Dame, bro. If he only wants to go to Miami, let him be. I'm going to be honest, like I said in the beginning of the video, the conversation isn't even about Dame at this point. It's just the whole idea of forcing yourself out of a situation that you was in. And, like, what is the line where you're doing too much, you know? So,
but the best coach in the entire league, period. I think that is an underrated factor in all of this. And with what Dame has given Portland, with his past loyalties, I think he is well within his right to expect them to do somewhat of a solid for him here. Like, come on guys, I gave you more opportunity than you ever deserved, and I subsequently wasted years of my prime trying to be competitive here and not achieving that to no fault of my own. So the least you can do is send me where I want to go. So that's where we started here. Things were civil, and no one was really too mad at Damian Lillard at this point. But then Dame made a move to swing the leverage in his favor by doing something some would consider kind of scummy, which was informing other teams.
Ron says, quote, doing too much, literally just ask for a trade. If you think all Dame did was just ask for a trade and just called it a day, you're fucking lying to yourself, buddy. You are. Stop playing.
That isn't Miami, and well, I guess also Portland, that if they traded for him, that would not work out in their favor. Dame doing this was already something that is frowned upon by many, but add on to it that he is doing this after just a year ago signing a 2-year extension to make his contract now covering the next 3 seasons for $51 million per year on average, with a $63 million player option. The length of his contract makes this more problematic to some people. This caused a real shitstorm of takes. In particular, there was just a huge sentiment around the idea of people just losing a lot of respect for Dame, highlighting times in the past where Lillard suggested moves like this were weak, most notably what he said to Paul George on Instagram a couple years ago. You know, Lillard claims to be loyal to Portland, but now he's going to leave them and completely screw them in the process by getting them a raw deal by forcing his way to Miami, because apparently other teams can make better offers and would do that, which I also don't even think is as true as people are making it sound. And after saying it's weak to force yourself to a particular team himself, he then goes on to do it. But then, the next shoe drops, which is when the NBA at least outwardly appears to essentially tell Dame and his agent to cut that shit out, also informing the Players Association that moves like it could result in issues for any player that does this. Now, his agent...
I think the reason why the NBPA is being so, about Dame in his comments is because it's going to affect the CBA and collective bargaining agreements. I know I just said the same thing, but it's going to affect those negotiations moving forward. If they see that if they see this type of behavior going on with the players, they are not moving, bruh. They are not moving. They're going to probably enforce stricter rules that don't allow player movement as much. And I'm sitting here low key, rightfully so, because we've gotten to a point where number one, I feel like the criteria for a supermax is low-key too low. Number two, people can get these supermaxes, which in theory should allow teams to retain players for as long as possible, especially for small market teams. But now we're in a situation where the team can offer a shit ton of money to this player. If they don't, they're going to look bad. The return for them should be having this player for an X amount of time, because this is the contract that you fucking signed. The contract is 4 years plus a player option on that 5th year. But now we're in a situation where apparently motherfuckers can just ask out of that contract and ask out and demand the trade and, you know, dictate exactly where they want to go to. And if they don't, they're not going to play for that team 2 years in. I understand the whole player movement thing. I truly do. But there's pros and cons, and there should always be a balance. And right now, I personally feel like it's dipping a little bit too much in the player's favor. That's just me, though. That's just me.
Actually denies telling teams that Dame would not play for them, but I personally don't believe him. I think that did happen. I'm also quite confident that this move by the NBA ultimately will not mean shit.
That too. Darren said it in the chat. NBA gonna kill fully guaranteed deals. Chat, I ain't gonna lie. Everything's fun in games now. But whenever that next collective bargaining agreement, all those negotiations start happening, and the fucking NBA and these owners say, yeah, because of the way y'all acting, fully guaranteed contracts are not a thing anymore. Yeah, it's gonna be really funny. It's gonna be real funny. Talking about he not doing too much. All right, bro. Okay.
Shit, I'm as confident as I could be that Miami is still going to end up being the team that trades for Dame. And whatever punishments could come from continuing doing things like this, it wouldn't be severe enough to actually be a serious deterrent, at least among the players making the kind of money that Dame is. Ben Simmons was willing to sacrifice like a year's worth of salary, for God's sakes. But now here we are at a standstill, waiting for anything to actually happen. But in the meantime, there's an important discussion to be had surrounding this discourse and this move by the NBA. Now, first things first, what Dame is doing here is far from unprecedented. It has happened plenty of times in NBA history.
Just fair, which is fair.
CP3 said, "Do not trade me to those old-ass Celtics."
Not
Carmelo
too much.
Anthony
Not
made
too
it
much.
clear he was not going anywhere but New York when he left Denver. Anthony Davis made sure.
And this is where I stay consistent. I think in all of these scenarios that Rusty's bringing up, it did get corny. Like, god damn. Really? But hey.
He was going to LA, no question about it. James Harden got to pick where exactly he would be traded the last 2 times, going on 3. Hell, even before he was in the NBA, Kobe made sure his ass didn't end up in Charlotte. But a lot of people seem to be rubbed the wrong way by this, specifically because it's Damian Lillard doing it. A lot of people, a lot more than you would think even, stand Damian Lillard specifically because of the loyalty thing. They weren't even necessarily Portland Trailblazers fans, but they liked that aspect of Lillard. This crowd of NBA fans tends to make it their job to bitch and moan about player empowerment, about players being able to choose specifically where they go. They hate anything even resembling what Dame has done here. For that crowd, Dame was the perfect example of what they think a star player should be to an NBA franchise. Loyal to the team, loyal to the city, doesn't make a big fuss when the rest of the team fucking sucks. You know, besides for a few cryptic tweets here or there. These are the types who would look at that reply from Dame to Paul George and think that shit was so hard and that Paul got completely owned. So this same crowd got super visceral, and I think overreacted to Dame pulling this move, and thus they're saying they've lost a ton of respect for him. The irony in all of this is from the actual Portland fans that I do know, which, to be fair, is just 3 people, but like, I feel like that's a lot of Blazers fans to know unless you live in Portland. In that group, they really don't seem to hate Lillard for this, like, at all. It's really just the dweebs who really harped on Dame's loyalty as some big deal. Now, as for what I think, well,
Big
first
dweebs.
of all, I would say, sure, there is a degree of hypocrisy, I suppose, to doing what he is doing now, but people can
I
change
think-
their minds.
Yeah.
Like Dame
That's what
said,
I'm about to say. Yeah, he does look like a crazy hypocrite. But it's also fine to change opinions. You know what I'm saying? The way I'm looking at every single one in the chat right now, the way y'all viewed the world 4 years ago is completely different than the way y'all view it now. Shit, even for me, the way I view content creation just a week ago is way different from how I view it now. You know what I'm saying? But in that regard, though, I do think there are a couple of instances where it's like, okay, I ain't gonna lie, I get it, your mind can change, but with the way you've been acting over the last 5 years, this does look crazy. This does look crazy. And out of everyone in the NBA, Dame has been the one that's been, yeah, I'm Mr. Loyal. I want to get it done in Portland, and I don't want to get it done anywhere else. Fuck the guys who stack the deck and go to other teams and don't thug it out. Nah, that ain't gonna be me. That's never gonna be me. I'm Dame. I'm Big Dame. Yeah, I'm one of the Dirks. I'm one of the Kobes. You know what I'm saying? I'm one of them. And then for all of a sudden, for you to not only demand the trade, but to go about it like this, again, Dame does look crazy. That's all I'm saying. He does look crazy.
not long ago that he had no doubt in his loyalty to Portland, and then a few weeks later he requested a trade. I really don't understand with that being something that changed about him, which is a pretty significant thing. People would not expect anything different to happen as well with how Dame has behaved. We have not seen Damian Lillard navigate a trade situation before. And tell me, what does his previous loyalty to Portland have anything to do with navigating a trade situation? I don't see the correlation. And I really do not agree with the notion that it's like selfish for him to force himself somewhere specifically because it hurts Portland's assets. Man.
Jay, I just want to emphasize this to Jay, and I'll read DSG super chat in a minute. Shout out to DSG. I think it's fine that he requested a trade, but two things can be true. I'm for Dame requesting a trade, but I'm not gonna lie, you do look crazy when you have been everything that I've just said. That's it. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I'm proud that he took the leap of faith and actually demanded a trade and see that he can make a shit ton amount of money in another scenario while still being able to play winning basketball. I'm happy for him. But at the same token, he does look crazy. Being Mr. Loyalty all of these years and now being, you know, Mr. Unloyal, like to the nth degree, you know? DSG Piccolo for $5. As a Dame fan turned Blazers fan, I'm not upset Dame wants out. It's time. I'm upset he wants Portland to take Miami's trash offer. And I agree. I agree with that as well.
Fuck that. Dame has given this franchise more than enough. I think it is absolutely ridiculous to also put the burden of harboring a good return for himself on top of it. It feels like people think because Dame was loyal to them for so long, he's still supposed to care about their future like that's his job anymore. It's silly. And I think Dame rightfully thinks, I have put my time in here. I should be rewarded with them trading me to the most ideal situation, even if it means getting a lesser return. Is there some hypocrisy in him asking for a deal altogether? I mean, I guess. But what else did you want from him? I don't think requesting one team to be moved to specifically is that much of a sin. I really, really don't. Now, as for the leverage he is specifically pulling against the other 28 teams in the league, is that okay? Well,
all right. I also want to clarify. I don't have a problem with Dame saying, yo, I'm demanding a trade, and I specifically want to go to the Miami Heat and calling it a day there. You know what I'm saying? I think when it becomes extra is the threat of sitting out games, is the threat of not playing for other teams if you don't get traded to said scenario. I think a person that did this just fine was Paul George, actually. When Paul George demanded a trade out of Indiana, I don't have a problem with that. I believe when Paul George requested out of Indiana, he was like, yeah, I want to go to the Lakers, and if not the Lakers, the Clippers. But then when Indiana came to him and said, yo, Cleveland's an option. Yo, I think Boston was an option at that time. Yo, OKC's an option. These are going to be scenarios where, listen, it's not where you want to go to, but hey, you're still going to be in a very winning situation, and you will have a chance to win a championship, and you get out of Indiana. And he said, bet, let's ball. Let's give Oklahoma City a fucking chance. I think that's great right there. I think that's great. But when you go to lengths of, yo, I want out of this city. I want to go to Miami, and if you send me anywhere else, yeah, I ain't playing for them. Okay. Okay. What? All right. What the fuck are we doing? What the fuck are we doing? Another person, Kawhi. Shout out to Darren in the chat. Kawhi's another one. Shout out to them Clipper boys, man. Kawhi wanted out of San Antonio, and I believe, like Paul George, was hinting at, yo, bring me to LA. Fuck it. Bring me to LA. But then he got traded to Toronto out of all places, which I'm going to be honest was not, I didn't expect that shit to come. He said, okay, I have 1 year left on my contract. I'm going to be a free agent after it. We got a good squad here. We can compete for a championship. And I'm going to give it my all to this franchise for this 1 year. And the cards will play out the way that they play out. And they won a fucking championship. I fuck with that. But I'm going to emphasize again, this is not just a Dame thing. When Harden did it, when AD did it, when Chris Paul did it, I didn't like, and I think even Kyrie to a certain degree, I didn't like the way they were going about it. And even Kyrie, I kind of respected Kyrie because all his shit was, post 2017 was, if y'all don't trade me, I'm not going to play. Just trade me anywhere else. So then he went to Boston. And all I'm going to say is there's a reason why he went up to that podium and said, yeah, if y'all would have me back next year, I'd like to resign. I saw how he played for us in 2018 and saw that he was actually giving effort out there. We was a number 1 seed with Kyrie. We had a 17, 15, 16 game winning streak with Kyrie. Shit just didn't turn out well after the 2019 season. But I definitely know for a fact he gave it a good effort in 2018. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
I understand this is a radical perspective given the length on his contract, but I think it is perfectly fine for him to do this. I think Dame and every other player is well within their right to request to go to one team specifically. Now, whether that team wants them is up to that team, so obviously stars have far more power to do something like this than role players would, and that's something I always want to mention when talking about player empowerment, is that often player empowerment actually just looks like star player empowerment, so just something to keep in mind. But as far as I am concerned in these situations, I am almost always going to be on the side of the player. Think for a second about what a trade actually is from the perspective of the player being traded. Not just, oh, it's cool that this team traded for this player. Think about how it actually affects their lives, because this is a seriously life-altering thing for them. In the case of Lillard, he has given this city 11 years of his life. He has been there since he was 22. He became the man that he is today there. For him, he is choosing to leave that, and that's a big-ass deal. That's why it took him so long to ask for a trade in the first place. So imagine you're Dame and you do this and you think you're going to end up in Miami and you get traded to fucking Utah. Fuck that, man. I think Dame and every player in the league, every player that was in the league, should be able to say, fuck that, I am not going to Utah. Fuck that, I am not going to Charlotte. Fuck that, I am not going to Boston. That one actually works twice. Within the power dynamic between front offices and players like Dame or Anthony Davis, there seems to be the impression that they have become the all-powerful ones, looking down upon the franchises that they can just easily...
Okay, he does bring up a good point. I will say that. He does bring up a good point. But even with that, I do still think there's a line. If I want out of Portland, there's specifically a reason, right? Like, yo, I want out of Portland because I want to go to a winning situation. So if y'all send me to Charlotte, if y'all send me to Houston, if y'all send me to maybe San Antonio is a special case because of Victor, but let's just say San Antonio, Detroit. Fuck that, I ain't playing. I'm honestly cool with that. But if there is an option for you to go to a contender, if there's an option for you to go to a competitive team, and you're just saying no because you want to go to a specific competitive team, again, that's where I think things cross the line. So,
bend to their will. But over here,
and again, to emphasize, it's not just Boston. If like Philly came to the table with an offer that Portland wanted to accept, I don't see why Dame should refuse that, bro. Why? You get to go to a team that's contending for a championship. You're going to be playing alongside fucking Joel Embiid. You got a good supporting cast with you. And if you're Dame for real, if you're this guy that you say you are, if you're trying to prove that you can win a championship as this guy that you say you are, why not go to Philly? Why not?
Here in reality, that is decidedly not the case. These franchises dictate the lives of these players in so many ways, and yeah, most of them are multimillionaires, but that does not change the fact that they are the workers in this relationship. These star players are employed by these NBA franchises. They are millionaires, but their true bosses are billionaires. And in the existing dynamic between a worker an employer, I'm pretty much always going to be on the side of the worker. And the conversation around Dame lately has been very much in the side of the employer there. I'm not going to call you a bootlicker, but it wouldn't be an unfounded accusation. Do not get me wrong, and this is very important. I care so much more about workers who are making $20,000 a year as opposed to $50 million. You know, UPS drivers and the Writers Guild that are striking right now. Their median income, I'm gonna guess, is a little bit lower than your average NBA player. But as it pertains to this conversation, Dame is in a far more exploitable situation here than any of these franchises are and probably ever will be. As far as player empowerment has gone, the power balance still leads heavily in favor of these franchises. I'm not saying this is necessarily oppressed versus oppressor, but if one of these sides is to be considered the oppressor, it is not the fucking players. That contract y'all insist he honors, as you put it, is just another way of a team controlling a player. When the NBA put out this memo, it was them strong-arming Dame and sending the message to the rest of these players that they are the ones with the power here. And if you are pushing this rhetoric, if you are shaming Damian Lillard for how he is going about this, you are being on the side of these billionaires. And if X.com is not proof enough that you should not be on that side, well, I don't know what is. I'm
gonna say that's a reach. Because, again, I am still for player empowerment. I would just like to acknowledge that there is a line. And I think that's fine. You can be for something and acknowledge when a line is being crossed. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And I understand, like, Rusty's trying to make this claim of a oppressed versus an oppressor dynamic here. But let's take it to another dynamic. It's also a business. It's also a business at the end of the day, if that's really what we're going to go to. If I'm a YouTuber and I hire someone for a 5-year contract to be my editor, and I ask for full exclusivity, maybe even a player option. Player option for an editor is crazy. That editor should not be able to force his way out 2 to 3 years into that contract just because he wants to edit for another YouTuber. In my opinion. Now, if the case is he can somehow prove that I'm like an abusive employer, I'm an unfair employer, X, Y, and Z, then I think there should be a process to prove that. And I guess that's the case for Dame in this case. Like, okay, I mean, in actuality, that should be the case. But when the team isn't providing you with help, then what the fuck? You shouldn't be trapped to that team. So I guess that's a fair case as well. But that's what I'm saying, though. I think there is a balance of where lines are being crossed in both directions. I think teams and franchises should have some sort of security when they sign players to these big-ass contracts. I do. And for players, I also think there should be a balance of, I should be able to control where I go, and I shouldn't be bound to these teams for the rest of my eternity just because I signed a contract for them, even if they're, not providing me with enough help, in my opinion. It's definitely a tricky situation. That's ultimately, that's what I'm going to end up saying in this video. It's definitely a tricky situation, and it's not black and white. It is a gray area. And like I always say on this stream, and in a lot of my videos, bro, the conversations that really get the conversations going, the truth is always going to be in the middle. There is a compelling side for one side or the other. And ultimately, the truth is always going to be in the middle. So,
completely understand how you can look at criticizing a millionaire as not being an anti-worker take, but just purely from the perspective of what that dynamic is, it absolutely is. Is it a kind of cheap move to tell every other team you'll make it a problem for them if they trade for you? Sure, I guess. But as manipulative as that may be, as much power as Dame's star talent brings him, all that only seeks to balance the scales. And even then, the power still very much exists outside of his hands. I gotta say, I feel bad for Dame. He's been put into a box of damned if you do, damned if you don't. For years, the crowd that I have very much been a part of has been asking him to ask for a trade for a very long time.
I don't think it's a damn if you do, damn if you don't situation. Cause I'm not gonna lie. If he stayed with the Portland Trail Blazers and was still on that, I'm Dame, I'm loyal to my franchise, we would have just kept on pushing and talked about the actual contenders in the league. Okay, fuck. Okay, you want to be a loser, that's fine. If he requested a trade and just left to, I want to go to Miami, but if y'all trade me anywhere else, as long as it's a contender, then I'm fine with it, I don't think people would be having this uproar. But for the last 2 months, for every report out there to just say, Dame wants to go to Miami. Dame wants to go to Miami. He's not gonna play he's not gonna play for anyone besides Miami. He's gonna sit out games. He's gonna do this, that, and the third. That's when it gets corny. That's when it gets tiring, bro. That's it. That's all. Is that too much? Chat, is that too much? I don't think that's too much. Bro.
And now he has finally done that. But then he apparently just loses respect from so many people just because he decided to finally do that and dared to demonstrate even a little bit of autonomy within that process. I also want to point out that I think it is extremely weird that Dame, of all people, is the one being condemned for this practice. This is the first time the league has made any kind of statement regarding a player forcing his way to one team in particular. They fined Anthony Davis a few times, and that's pretty much been it. But multiple star players throughout history have done this exact thing. As I previously mentioned, James Harden himself in this offseason now wants to go specifically to the Clippers after forcing himself specifically to the Sixers, after forcing himself specifically to the Nets. But Lillard, who has given more grace to the Portland Trail Blazers than any franchise has ever deserved from their superstar player, he's the one on the chopping block. Make it make sense.
Oh, okay. Let's make it make sense. It goes back to what I said. James Harden has never been Mr. Loyal. He's never, and I'm gonna read Mir Super Chat here in a second. He's never been a dude clowning other motherfuckers for stacking the deck. That's never been James Harden from my understanding. That's never been James Harden. And also, when he was asking out of Houston, doing the exact same thing Rusty was talking about, he was getting a lot of shit for it. Chat, am I wrong? Chat, am I wrong? I remember the fat suit Harden memes. He was getting a lot of shit for it. So I can't say that James Harden is just, hey, he's doing all of this with no criticism, but why is all the attention on Dame? It's unfair to Dame. No, because James Harden has also received that criticism. And at this point in his career, we've just accepted that this is just James Harden. And like Cardiac said in the chat earlier, hey, he doesn't fuck with James Harden for that reason. Meanwhile, with Dame, he's been Mr. Loyal. I'm never going to leave my franchise. Fuck the guys who do. Because y'all taking the easy way route, and I'm taking the hard route. The real route, though. The real route. The real route. I've never heard that from James Harden. And that's the difference. And also the reason why Dame is getting more attention than James Harden right now is because Dame has never been traded. Dame is a bigger name right now in terms of this discussion. Dame is the one that's going to get the headlines right now. That's it. That's it. But trust me, if it was the exact same thing but just different names, and it was James Harden on the Portland Trail Blazers, and it was Dame that did everything that James Harden did, James Harden would still be getting all of this shit. I'm going to keep it a bean.
It is well understood that his loyalty was of great significance to that franchise. He has dragged them to more success than they had any right to have, and he has been with them for 11 seasons. Meanwhile, players who have given their teams literally a year and a half can force their way to one specific team and then do that same thing, and not a fucking word is said. Now,
that's what I'm saying. Rusty, respectfully, I disagree like crazy with you. To say not a fucking word has been said about James Harden is crazy. It's that, chat, that's crazy. That's crazy right there. That's crazy. You're pandering a little bit too much to Dame. We was cooking James Harden when he wanted out of Houston, bro. Stop it. Stop it.
As I said, I don't approve of Dame and players like him doing things like this. So I don't disapprove of Harden doing this as much as it is sad that it keeps happening. But if we're going to persecute anyone for this, it is insane to me that Lillard was the choice. If anyone has a right to get away with some shit like this,
we're talking about the memo,
and the fact that he's the one that a memo was made for, ridiculous. Now, as I previously mentioned, to end this off, I care way more about the workers' rights for someone making $20K a year versus $50 million. My job is to talk about basketball, so that's what I did for most of this video. But now's time to actually talk about something important here. There have been a lot of different industry workers unionizing lately. Obviously, Hollywood writers and actors is the one that everyone's talking about because, well, most unions don't have Bryan Cranston doing speeches for them. But UPS drivers have unionized and are going to get a historic deal out of it. I'm just a YouTuber.
Yo, apparently, I don't know if it's true. Yo, like UPS drivers are about to get like 6-figure contracts. Now that shit is crazy. That shit is nuts. Also, maybe if I misheard the statement, that's fine. But if it even is about the memo, like why did Dame get the memo and not James Harden, I guess that's a more fair statement. But it's more so on the lines of, number one, the new CBA agreement. Like that's been a big deal this offseason. And when you have a repeated history of Chris Paul doing the same thing, Anthony Davis doing the same thing, James Harden doing the same thing, like at some point, whoever is trying to make this message, they just got to use someone as an example as that stopping point. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like when you're in a line, like at some point you just got to cut someone off at this point. And I'm sorry that you got to be cut off at this exact point right here, but that's just is what it is. You know what I'm saying? Let me go ahead and read the super chat from earlier. Mir for $5 says he was saying it's exploitative, but you gonna sit here and say if you pay someone to do their job and they sign a contract and say never mind, I'm done. That's crazy. Again, I think there's a middle ground to it. That's essentially my stance on this. Like workers should be able to, and employees should be able to get out of bad situations if they're in bad situations. But at the same token, if you're a franchise that's given, that's a good employer. If you're a good employer and you sign people to a certain contract length, you should also be protected in some regards to having that employee as an employee for an X amount of time. You know what I'm saying? And especially in the case of NBA players, with them giving out $50-60 million a year to these dudes, I think the protection should be more than just 2 years in the case of Damian Lillard. I think the protection should be more, because I'm going to be honest, that whole player option shit at the last year shit doesn't really mean much anymore. I feel like when I see someone sign for a 5-year contract, but that 5th year has a player option, I'm really looking at a 4-year contract at this stage in time. And if shit isn't really rocking after year 3, that's really a 3-year contract that player is going to ask out of. You know what I'm saying? But it is what it is.
I'm privileged to not be beholden to a multi-billion-dollar industry. I mean, a bit by YouTube itself, but for the most part, this is just real estate for my business. I don't have a boss. But even as someone on the outside looking in, I can see how important this is. Whatever job you are working, find out if they have a union and join it. And if they don't, talk to your coworkers and see if that's something that you could potentially start. These people who own the capital, the CEOs of these multi-billion-dollar corporations, they do not deserve the power and privilege that they have. They are not better than you. They are not smarter than you. That is a myth that they have convinced you of to justify screwing you over. People working full-time deserve a living wage at the barest of minimums, and that is increasingly becoming impossible in this hellscape of a country. So do what you can. You have more power than you think. Anyways, I'll get off my soapbox. Shout out to Rudy for editing this long-ass video, and goodbye.
Now I fuck with the video, though. I fuck with the video. Shout out to this crew right here. Oh, you see the shirt. I fuck with the video, though. It's just basketball debates. It is what it is. Shout out to Rusty for the video, though. You know what I'm saying?
The Damian Lillard trade
link to his video will be in the description.